really get into this morning, which we're going to, I'd like us to go back for just a moment to the Old Testament. 2 Samuel, the last chapter. This is about the end of David's life and his reign. And previous to what we're going to read here in the last part of chapter 24, we realize that David had trouble listening to God. He said he wanted to do a census of the people, and God said no. David said, I'm going to do it anyway. So that precedes this reading here, and as a result of David's crass disobedience to God, there came a pestilence upon the land. And Gad told David, you need to go make a sacrifice. Go up, make a sacrifice. Araunah has a place that you can do this. So in the last part of this chapter, we come to this incident. And beginning in verse 21 of 2 Samuel 24, Araunah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? And David said, to buy the threshing floor from you, in order to build an altar to the Lord, that the plague may be held back from the people. And Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take and offer up what is good in his sight. Look, the oxen for the burnt offering, the threshing sledges, and the yokes of the oxen for the wood. Everything, O king, Araunah gives to the king. And Araunah said to the king, may the Lord your God accept you. However, the king said to Araunah, no, but I will surely buy it from you for a price. For I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, which cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for the 50 shekels of silver. David built there an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offering and peace offering. And thus the Lord was moved by prayer for the land, and the plague was held back from Israel. Now back to Philippians chapter 2. Brother John had read. Verse 30. Very interesting to me, because I have no idea what happened to make Epaphroditus sick almost to death. We just know from God's Word, from what we've read, that he nearly died. But what we do know as we read on about Epaphroditus is that he continued to work for the Lord. Now bear in mind, here's a man who very nearly lost his life. And as Brother John had read, he did this, he was doing this for God. He had, I think in his mind, what he considered was necessary for him to do. And he did it. Now, what about you? And what about me? Do we know what God expects of us? Do we know what our potential is? And more important, do we reach that potential that is expected of us? What can you do for the Lord today? And I'm talking to me too. What can you do for the Lord today? And what about next week? What about the rest of this month? What about next year? What can you do for God? Now, I realize times are, they're really not all that good right now, okay? We all recognize that fact. But isn't there something that you and I can do in the meantime? Now, come back to that question. What price are we willing to give, to pay for God? This is something that we really need to think about. I want to get rather personal, but you think about it. We're talking about paying a price. Should we put ourselves in danger to save someone else? I don't know what Epaphroditus did, but I know he put himself in danger. Well, maybe sometimes we don't even want to put ourselves out. You know, not put ourselves in danger, but okay, try being a fireman sometime. You know, every time a fireman goes to a fire, he doesn't know that he's going to come back alive, because he doesn't know what's going to happen at that fire. They do it all the time, you see. A doctor? Yeah, same thing. A doctor puts himself in jeopardy when he goes and does his job. Or a healthcare worker in a nursing home. I mean, people put themselves in danger. What are we willing to do? Somebody that's sick, you know. To really reach the place where we need to be requires just one thing: total commitment. That's what we're talking about this morning. It requires a commitment from you. Your total commitment, if you're going to be pleasing to God. And I think the story of Henrietta and Patty is pretty relevant. You've probably heard it, the story of Henrietta the hen and Patty the pig. Remember them? They were walking along together in the countryside one day, and they happened upon a man who was half starved. I mean, this guy was he was going to starve to death. And after pondering the situation for a minute or two, probably, Henrietta Hen, who happened to be a very benevolent hen, she suggested that it might be proper that they would prepare a meal for this half-starved man. She said, we could prepare him a meal of bacon and eggs. And the astonished Patty Pig looked at Henrietta the hen and replied, Henrietta, that may involve a small sacrifice for you, but for me, it would be total commitment. You see the connection? See the connection? Reaching our potential as a Christian requires total commitment. But are we ready for that? Are you ready for that? You know, Jesus Christ was. He paid the price. He was totally committed to what he needed to do. And maybe we aren't, maybe we aren't all ready to go out and teach and baptize people with COVID-19. But maybe some are. Maybe some people are. Let's go back and look in the Old Testament for a minute again. I want you to look at Hezekiah. Now this is back in 2 Chronicles chapter 31. Let's start reading. Well, just the last two verses, chapter 31. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and he did what was good, right, and true before the Lord his God. Every work which he began in the service of the house of God, in law and in commandment, seeking his God, he did with all his heart, and he prospered. But what you need to read Jonah in chapter 32 in 2 Chronicles, because it talks about what Hezekiah had to do, what he did. He paid a real price. He was willing to pay the price, and he did. This man, Hezekiah the king, he changed his lifestyle completely. He went about it in a whole different... He couldn't live the way his father had lived. And kings live well, don't they? No. Hezekiah decided he was going to do what God wanted him to do. He became a lonely man. He became almost a despised man, even though he was king, because he had faith in God. He had to work hard. Hezekiah gave up his riches, his money that was really his. He lived under constant pressure because he felt that he needed to reform his people for God. They weren't living for God, and he wanted them to. Hezekiah paid a tremendous price, but just like Epaphroditus, he succeeded in what he was doing. He reformed his people. He brought them back to God. Why? Because he had faith in God and what God would do for him. I'll tell you, friends, it really bothers me, sometimes to a greater degree at others, but it bothers me what is happening in our society today. And I'm not talking about just today, I'm talking about in the past several years. What happens concerning our relationship with God. You may argue with me, but friends, I'll tell you what my feeling. I think that this is more important than COVID-19 today, is our relationship with God. I'll say this, and I really believe it's true. I believe that we are being tested today. I think that this, God knows what we can do and what we can bear. He knows what our potential is. And I think that maybe He's testing us today. Our country, our people are now and for several decades have been threatened by a secular society. Oh, it's too bad. This has led to confusion. It has led to conflict. It has led to divisions in people because they're not listening to God. Oh, sure, we acknowledge the importance of faith. Everybody does. Oh, yeah, well, I have faith in God. But what really do we have faith in? Where does our faith lie? We don't like it. But there's an increasing lack of interest in God today. I'll tell you why. I know. I'll tell you what I think. Science and technology, to a great degree, have taken the place of faith. People believe in science and technology more than they believe in what God has told, and therefore religion becomes just a lifestyle. It's not something that's a place of service, commitment to God. It's a lifestyle. And I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, but a lot of people, they only observe their lifestyle religion occasionally, maybe at Christmas. Hey, yeah, what about Easter? Sure, that's exactly what a lot of people do this. So what happens? The question comes, what happens? Just take a look and see. Look at people's attitude. Go back. Oh. You know what they're doing? I like other kinds of music. Let's change worship so that we can be worshiping the way I like. Maybe God doesn't like anything but a cappella music. I don't know. But you see, we don't have the right to do that. I preach what I want to hear. I wonder if Brother James ever hears that. Preach what I want to hear. Remember, the attitudes of the people that we read about in the 2nd chapter of Acts and verse 37. On the day of Pentecost, the apostles, they preached the gospel to these people and they told them where they were. And they were pricked in the heart. And look at what they said. Men and brethren, what shall we do? That was a question they asked. You know what people are saying today? What can the church do for me? It's what we need to do for God and for the church. There's not much commitment today. Not much of a sense of obligation to God. There's no accountability today. You know what? Go back to that secular society we live in. Jesus Christ is Lord only in name for a lot of people. And that is a sad situation. So, society rocks on. You know what's happening. Evolution is being taught as a fact in our schools. There is no accountability there. Faith has no place in our public institutions. You can't even mention God anymore. And people frown on gospel preaching. You know what they say? Oh, you're just trying to proselytize somebody into following you what you want them to do, into your way of thinking. Or maybe even worse. You are being judgmental when you talk about our duty to God. Isn't that too bad? But that's what's happening. And then, as society struggles, a small virus brings us to our knees. You can't even see coronavirus D19. But it has brought a lot of people. We become afraid. The medical experts, if you want to use that term, putting that in quotations, do their best to protect us physically, yes. But you know what? They come to realize pretty soon just how impotent they really are. It's killing people all the time. Go back to the history of Israel. This happened several times in the history of Israel. This is God's chosen people. And time after time after time, they were just knocked down to nothing. What was their response each time that they faced these ordeals that they brought upon themselves? Actually, their response was a recognition of just how dependent they were on God. Not on themselves, but on God. One of my favorite scriptures has always been the last two verses of the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's go there for just, you know it. In conclusion, now this is the New American Standard. In conclusion, when all has been heard, is this: fear God and keep His commandments, because this is the whole duty of man. It said this applies to every person, for God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. Now, bearing that in mind, do you suppose, I'm just thinking a question, will the world learn righteousness from this pandemic? We'll cogitate just a moment on that. Will they learn it? Will they learn righteousness? I don't know. I don't know. But some, I think, are beginning to see just how vulnerable and how helpless they are. Real Christians have always realized what some people, a lot of people, are just beginning to realize. Remember these three words: we need God. But conversely to that, God needs you. You see, we need each other. God created us to be His, just to be a part of Him. But we have to commit ourselves to God more than anything else. We need to submit to His will. Oh man, you don't want to do that. Yes, that's what God wants. We need to fully commit ourselves to His will and His service. Now, we're going to wind this up on a good note. You see, you can. You can do this. God has provided in us the ability to serve Him, to love Him, to submit to Him. And you can do this. It's not too hard. Believing, repenting, being baptized. Friends, this is what commitment is. But it doesn't end there. It means that every day of our lives, we still submit ourselves and commit ourselves to God. That's what we all need to do. If you've never done this, it's time. You can do that today. It's so simple, so easy to commit yourself, your life, your being to God. We're here to help. I know I read something here a while back, talked about things that people say and talk about. And after all of these things that we can do, that we say we can do, we wind up on our own without any help. We wind up just making more problems than what we started with. You know, God can take care of that. But you have to do your part. If we can encourage you in any way, if you need to change, if you need to believe and obey, hey, what better time than now?